Hi, everyone. Welcome again to Coach's Corner. It's been a while, a long sort of while. I'm your host once again, Nathan Nguyen. And Coach Wilson is back with me once again to talk some ball. Coach, it's good to see you again. It's been a minute. A lot of things have happened, especially with Colorado and Travis Hunter specifically. Won the Heisman. We called it all year long. We've been waiting. It's like Hunter's gonna win the Heisman. Hunter's gonna win the Heisman over and over and over again. We spoke into existence. Well, he played it into existence too. And look at him now, the 2024 official Heisman winner over Ashton Jeanty, Dillon Gabriel, and Cameron Ward. So first off, Coach, how are you? And let's get right into it. How do you feel, Coach? It finally happened. Hunter is our Heisman winner.
Well, it's been a great college football season. I think
Yeah.
from the second they said they were going to release NCAA football 24. Is it 24 or 25? It's
25, Coach. You're good.
25, yeah. Once they established that they were going to release that game, it created a bunch of hype and anticipation. We already had some big name players last year who were coming back into this year, and obviously year two of Coach Prime at Colorado, and they kind of fell under the radar. But right from week one, the campaign began. Travis Hunter just lit up North Dakota State, and he just played a lot of offense. So that was like the story every week you and I were getting hyped about, was just like, how long is this going to keep going? And even though they had some hurdles earlier in the season, it was like, is this the same Colorado team again? And he had a little bit of an injury, wasn't as bad as last year, but it was a slight hiccup in regards to seeing where the season was going to go. But after that, he even took it up another level.
Mm-hmm.
Or 2 or 3 more interceptions on defense. I thought he started to really become dominant on that side of the ball as Colorado emerged. And then offensively, it's like, dude, they got 4 or 5 other capable receivers, and you got a corner over here getting like all the targets. And so that's what I thought was so fascinating, man. I was not really surprised. I feel like there have been a handful of dynamic DBs in college. Like Aqib Talib did it quite a bit actually at Kansas, and I thought Patrick Peterson, if given the opportunity, could have made a splash on offense. But Coach Prime obviously understands the capabilities of the kid and let him do that. So it was just spectacular. What were your thoughts? I know we anticipated him winning. At what point did you think like this is a real thing? Like he actually might win the trophy?
Yeah, you mentioned the hiccup, right, with the injuries and whatnot with Hunter, and there was a stretch towards like the middle of the season where he was like not putting up gaudy receiving numbers. But once that Cincinnati game hit, like in late October, we had like 9 catches for 153 yards, and he just kept having like constant multiple touchdown games, 100 plus receiving yards at cornerback. He was getting interceptions and tackles and all that good stuff.
Forced fumble against Baylor too. I think
That
that's
was, yeah.
a play.
Yeah, and he mentioned it too. He was asked in an interview, and he was like, "Yeah, I knew the Heisman was a reality when he forced that fumble because he didn't score that game at all, but he forced that very clutch fumble that sealed the win for Colorado." And it's like you would think he would have said like maybe like his 2 touchdown game, for example, in the many instances that he's done that, or an interception of sorts. No, he just mentioned that fumble that just helped the team win, and he didn't do much outside of that fumble. So for me, I think just seeing what he did like during that last stretch to try to will Colorado to a playoff spot. Unfortunately, they didn't make the Big 12 championship because of that loss to Kansas, unfortunately. And we talked about a little bit after that game because we were texting each other, and it was kind of tough to see because we were hoping that they would win that game because if they won that game, there's no way they're going to lose to Oklahoma State. They would have made the Big 12 championship, and who knows what would have happened after that. Honestly, they would have won the Big 12 championship, in my opinion. I'm sure that's the same for you too. But, that loss hurt. But at the end of the day, Hunter still played phenomenally all year long, had over 1,000 receiving yards on the year, 92 receptions, 14 touchdowns. And of course, on defense, where I had 4+ interceptions on the year, multiple passes deflected and all that stuff. And look, I will say, Coach, there were a lot of people out there who were like, okay, that's great, but Gianti's putting up gaudy rushing numbers. And, there are times. I'm sorry?
And his team is doing better.
Yeah, and his team is doing better, right? The Boise State, they're in the playoffs and all that good stuff. They won the Mountain West. And, I spoke with some friends of mine, and they were like, yeah, Gianti should have won Heisman. And it's biased that Hunter won because, He plays both ways. He gets media attention, all that stuff. And after when they were at at the ceremony, right? They were talking about how Hunter won, but Gianti won the fan vote, and then the total vote overall was like the closest it's been ever. It was like a 200 point or vote difference between Gianti and Hunter for the Heisman. So it was a good race between the two, and Gianti played phenomenal. But I've always supported Hunter from the start, and obviously, of course, you have done too, Coach. And it's like we just haven't seen a guy play two ways like this and be efficient and has stayed healthy doing it. Of course, he had the injury early in the year, but he's been able to still go on the field and produce and be just the total package that, honestly, if all goes well, will be the number one overall pick in the NFL draft when April comes around.
Look, dude, take a step back too for everything that you said, and obviously you gave praise to Jeanty in the remarkable season that he had.
Yeah.
But let's look at the other two guys. And this was really an incredible race. I forgot the last time the Heisman Trophy race was so exciting. You have Cam Ward coming on to Miami 1 year, tried to enter the draft last year. We talked about his story, but that team really having a win now roster. And him coming in, filling the role, and really giving Miami stability and just an electrifying playmaker at the quarterback position that I don't think the program's ever seen. I have a friend of mine down in South Florida, coached football throughout the area for years, and saw all those athletes that played at the U come up when they were in middle school. Really understands ball. And after Cam Ward's second game, he's like, is Cam Ward the greatest quarterback in Miami history? It's as a Miami purist. And again, Miami's had a lot of great players, but Ken Dorsey's probably, just with his legacy of just sheer winning games. Obviously, Vinny Testaverde won the Heisman. But Cam Ward, man, you've never seen a quarterback of that stature at a program that when they get hot, Miami's powerful. And I think college football is better when Miami is good. Same with Penn State and Notre Dame, but they're one of those blue bloods, if you will. So that's a remarkable story, although they couldn't come through down the stretch. And then Dillon Gabriel. And I was thinking about it. I was like, this guy's been slighted. What's his deal, right? Went to UCF, brought them to some crazy heights, won some big bowl games, threw for a ton of yards. Then he went to Oklahoma, was pretty good. No one talked about him. I guess he had looked at entering the draft last year and came back too short. I could see his limitations, but he's definitely accurate and he's mobile. And he's a pretty good decision maker. And so it's why isn't he getting more recognition? So to then go into Oregon and step in there, similar fashion to Bo Nix, for whatever reason, Bo Nix kind of went under the radar. When you look at, he had the measurables, he has the intangibles, and he has the on-field body of work. Dillon Gabriel essentially did the same thing with that Oregon roster. And so with all the stories going on in college football, and they all are really exciting, and they have been leading up to the season because you still have Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio State. All those teams have stories, and now Texas is in the mix as one of the best. And so you have all these things working in different directions, but the one thing that stayed constant, I believe Oregon's been the number one team from day one. And a lot of people pick them to win. And so historically, when we've given the Heisman Trophy to the best player on the best team and the type of season that Dillon Gabriel had, history would tell me that Dillon Gabriel would win the Heisman this year. And that's why it's so unique to me. Mm-hmm. And I'm interested to see where he measures up as a prospect. And let's not forget Shedeur Sanders. He wasn't in the race. They don't want to put two Buffaloes in it, and for whatever reason, helicopter. All right, hey man, I live close to a military base. It's just part of it. I enjoy it. Sometimes I'm just like, oh, this is a unique experience. Appreciate it. No, it's hard to put two guys on the same team. I remember Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush weren't it. I mean, it happens from time to time.
Yeah.
Shedeur Sanders as well, and he's had a spectacular season too. So, yeah, man, it was just a really good race. And I think all these players have a bright future after the college game as well, which is what's most exciting about it.
Yeah, all four guys that were in contention, or the top four finalists, I should say, for the Heisman, they all have a chance to go in the first round, especially, the obvious with Hunter and Ward and Gianti. Now, with Gabriel,
second round pick. Second round pick. He's a safe second round pick.
Safe second round pick, yeah. But in terms other than I haven't really seen much of him for me to be like, okay, that's a first rounder, but obviously he can show
Played a
out at
lot
the
of football.
combine.
Like that. He's played a
Mhm.
lot of football.
And experience helps, right, coaching? He's gone through
Oh, for
different
sure.
different
Bo Nix
schools, different
had a lot of
systems.
football too.
Yeah, and look at Bo Nix now. He's doing really well in Denver. But yeah, I honestly think Shedeur should have been maybe top 4 as one of the top 4 finalists, but he finished 6th overall. Cam Scatterbo from Arizona State, the running back, finished 5th. So overall, it was a good Heisman race, Coach, I would say. But man, our boy Hunter, he did it. Now, of course, right now his Heisman win has kind of been overshadowed with some off the field stuff with his current fiance and all that stuff, but we won't dive into that too much because that's not what this podcast is for. But just
I will say though, for just young people that have a lot of fame over a very short period of time, and the internet obviously being bored looking to pinpoint anything, she released a video today on TikTok. It was like an 8-minute video in which she carried herself in just addressing every single issue. It was pretty impressive. And so I feel like at this point, in regards to just how Travis Hunter carries himself, the people he has in his corner, and for his girl to go on camera and handle her own, it's like you really can't even like mess with this kid anymore. You're just like you're forcing it at this point. You know what I mean? It's so obvious because he's obviously like he's to me like a Giannis Antetokounmpo, and his approach to the game and how he carries himself. Like he's just about the sport. Like his personal life has no relevance. He doesn't even want that. He just plays the sport. Like that's what you want in an athlete.
yeah,
He's actually wearing the hat of being a role model perfectly, and it's evident that his girlfriend now recognizes that, her fiance, after this period of time of being together, and she's willing to wear that hat, if you will, metaphorically,
yeah,
and support him in being the best athlete you could be. And I think that's really important for an athlete that's on a path to greatness, to have that stability at an early age. It displays a lot of maturity.
yeah. And it sucks how she has to do this. You kind of have to make this video in the first place, but because everyone is trying to find the bad thing in Hunter's life, right? Because with all this success, they're like, okay, but there has to be something wrong in
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
And there's videos of his girl when he was at the Adidas event, where she was kind of upset how like there was audio where she was like, do I just have to sit here, whatever the case may be, and everyone was like, see right there, she's terrible. You got to get a prenup or everything in your mom's name and all that stuff. And it's just like people are always trying to find the negatives, and it has not affected Hunter. I mean, sure, he's released a video of his own saying, y'all should worry about your own girl or get a girl or worry about your own life, right? And he's standing up for his fiance as he should. And we've seen him kind of be petty a little bit with the fans, like he's posting pictures of his fiance randomly, or making videos, or they're posting on TikTok together, like all this stuff. It is kind of petty, but it's a good type of petty in that, hey, like him and his fiance are showing like, hey, whatever you guys say, it's not going to affect us. We're still tight. We're still together, and that's a good thing. And I love Hunter, and I've said it multiple times on this podcast, Coach. I don't love him just because of what he does on the field. It's the off the field, the goofiness, his multiple streams with celebrities and stuff. Like he's just a goofy guy who just loves to live life, and it just so happens he's a good freaking player on the football field. And I'm so excited, honestly, to just see him in the NFL. And he got his Heisman; he deserved it. And they have their bowl game coming up, which we'll discuss later on as a preview for our next episode as well. But a shout out to Hunter, and he finally got the Heisman that me and you have talked about on multiple occasions, and it's well deserved as well. And of course, props to Jeanty, Gabriel, and Mr. Ward as well. By the way, the Army quarterback was also in the top 10.
Of course. I mean, he was a catalyst in their triple option, and Army had a lot of success, so they couldn't finish the job and take down Navy.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm excited because I picked Navy. Because in my other podcast I'm a part of, we make picks every week, and I was the only one that picked Navy as an upset. They were 6.5. Army was 6.5 favorites, so I was like, nah, I believe in the Navy, right? So they got the win.
It's also good for college football when the service academies are playing well.
Oh, 100%. It was just weird to see him play well this year, for sure.
Yeah, well, they always play good defense. I talked before about them playing this positionless defense and holding Oklahoma's #1 offense with Lincoln Riley to under 10 points with this defensive coordinator named James Bateman. He was running this exotic 3-4. And that's when I was just like, with disciplined players at Army, and they all have like fit body types, you're going to have a lot of hybrids. You can do some crazy stuff schematically. So I know that. And again, Bill Belichick's origins, and we're going to go into this. This will all tie together. Coach is going down one of his rabbit holes. But Bill Belichick's origins of his dad being a scout for the Naval Academy is where a lot of those fundamentals come from, and how he runs his organization and how he looks at like this 2-platoon model of like giving guys defined roles, but also valuing versatility, and also understanding the value in small things like long snappers and gunners on special teams. Like those are things that are like truly emphasized at the service academies and how they play football. I went to a school actually in my journey called Salisbury University, and we were ranked like top 10 every single year. The year before I got there, they had lost to Wisconsin Whitewater, who wins the D3 national championship. Them and Mount Union, or did for about 2 decades. And Salisbury ran a triple option, and our coaches had a relationship with Georgia Tech, who were like the pioneers of bringing that back throughout the 2000s. And it impacted how we played this complementary style of football, and like how much like our team was like taught to think through situations. Like we would talk like, all right, there's like this amount of time left. We have 2 timeouts. How are we going to handle this? And like talk about this in meetings. And so seeing elements of the triple option in the service academies and the discipline and the blocking and tackling, a coach getting into the game in their early stages, it's a really, really good place to be. Even in JUCO, my team won a bowl game. We finished 12-1. We had NFL players. We went undefeated, except for our opening game. We played Navy Prep. These are all the players that are going to go on to the Naval Academy, but like in their 1-year post grad, and they just ran the triple option and killed us, man. And the game was like 12-9.
Oh my god, that's ugly.
Yeah,
That's ugly.
like our team, the way our roster was built, we looked like an SEC team at like the JUCO level. And so to get busted down by a team like that, I've seen it firsthand. And so that's what I love about Bill Belichick. But I did just want to say with Bill Belichick and this old school style football and Travis Hunter, because he's a renaissance man.
It is.
The fact that there aren't guys that do that anymore. And his whole football journey has been him playing both sides of the ball, so he doesn't know anything else. And what I'd like to see is him revolutionize his approach to training in VO2 max and understanding I have to gain a little bit more weight in foods that are going to have a good pH balance. Like he needs to get into that Brady-esque type of diet and lifestyle. And if he does those things correctly, I believe Travis Hunter could be a branding juggernaut. And so a key thing that's going to support where Travis Hunter can take it as far as being a superstar non-quarterback in the football world is the market that he goes to. And I believe that at number 3, with the way things are projecting right now, that Travis Hunter would be a great fit for the New England Patriots. Drake May has presented tremendous potential. I was totally wrong, and I'll own that. He's a competitor. He says all the right things after the games. And while Gerard Mayo is on the verge of being canned, if he hasn't already, I do believe that Bob Kraft is a guy that wants to win. I believe that they'll take a chance on a coach. And if they could pick up a T. Higgins, which they probably have the most cap available to spend in this free agency, you throw Travis Hunter in the mix with Drake May at the helm. And I think that defense, no matter what, still has some leftover pieces from the Belichick regime where those guys, again, if they just get a right coach schematically, wouldn't it be funny if Nick Saban coached there? But anyway, I think that they can reload really quickly. But I say that because the Patriots they have a huge fan base in Germany, and the European market, with Travis Hunter being an Adidas guy, as I was talking to you about this as well, as they have that international market, and the NFL plays multiple games overseas. And so a young kid wanting to get into football, like youth football, and can I play corner and receiver? Well, you can create camps and you can specialize and start training kids to do those things with one-on-ones in a very similar culture to basketball and like skill development, where football has barriers because you're in pads, but it's taking elements of 7-on-7 in like quarterback training and doing that for receiver receiver DB. So every kid presents that dualistic skill set, kind of like being a wing in basketball. Like there are defensive wings, there are shooter wings, there are guys that are just all around players. The receiver DB position can transform. And so even as like a school that's recruiting, they just recruit like 15 guys that can play receiver and DB. And the way they run their practice is everyone plays both. Can transform your whole developmental plan. So if all these things can click correctly and Travis Hunter can play at a high level and be utilized properly within an NFL team, because I know that he can do it. I know he has the ability to do it, undoubtedly. But it's going to be about how he's utilized and getting the most out of his skill set. And then that will create the opportunity to market him. But if the NFL is all about making money and they want to tap into these international markets, I can see the opportunity present itself. So I would love for him to go there. So talking about Heisman Trophy and his journey, because I think his journey is fascinating, being from the Palm Beach area to getting relocated, kind of unknown who he lived with, who funded that. That a lot of that stuff happens in the football world. I have friends who got relocated by coaches, but he got relocated. Cam Newton's a 7-on-7 coach, and now Coach Prime gets him, pulls him from Florida State. It's like magical, man.
I know.
It seems to make sense.
And honestly, Deion and Shooter were the best things that happened to his life, Hunter, and he acknowledged it during his Heisman speech, and Deion has done an incredible job, just recruiting him, taking him away from a big school in Florida State, and for good reason too, because Florida State this past year, they were terrible.
The pick of Malzahn's going to help them a lot, though, as the offensive coordinator. He left his head coaching job at UCF to be the OC at Florida State. I always find that to be interesting.
Why do coaches do that sometimes, Coach? Because I think head coach is always a better job than OC most of the time, right? Why does a coach do that?
That's a common move. In the college football landscape, running a program, you obviously want to be a head coach as you evolve, but as a head coach, if you're a play caller, okay, or like you have a ton of control, you want to begin delegating and being more of a manager and a figurehead, just the evolution of a coach. And so you get out of the schematics, actually. You're really just running the operation. And so Gus Malzahn is a guy that he's probably trying to build UCF, a program that's been pretty good. And he was a guy that he kind of left Auburn on bad terms. Like, even if you look at the story of guys that do that, Chip Kelly recently did that from UCLA to Ohio State. Again, just not feeling like he could probably compete with NIL, the conference switch, who they're going to have to be. Just like, this is a dead end. And so I got into coaching because I love schematics. And now I have a guy that's taken on the load of doing all the big boy stuff. And I can sit back here and just write up plays. But I have experience and total authority over the offense, because when a head coach, like at Alabama, when Saban was there, like when Lane Kiffin was his OC, Lane Kiffin is essentially the head coach of the offense. All of those offensive players are listening to him, but Nick Saban is coaching Lane Kiffin to run the offense.
Yeah.
But Josh McDaniels in New England was the same way, where Josh McDaniels was hot for an extended period of time and probably could have got the top head coaching job any year, but he's getting paid $3-4 million a year, which is a lot of money for a coordinator. I'm sure his family's comfortable in that area. He's has a head coach that lets him run the whole show, and a quarterback who's going to present a chance to win every year. And so you can find yourself in opportunities where it's no, the coordinator job is much better. I can tell you, I coached 2 years ago, having been a head coach, and I was I just want to be a defensive coordinator. That is probably the hardest job at the high school, college level, individually, head coach, position coach included. And I was I just want to take on the challenge of having a defense on my own. I don't want the head coach responsibilities, but I can just do this with ball, and no one else wants to do it. Because when a coach is building a staff, basically sits in the room with who has the expertise, and then just appoints coaches. And so having been an OC, an OC can be, it's fun, but
it is
stressful. For sure. It's fun, but it can become redundant, especially when you have a lot of good players you got to get the ball to. And the personalities bump heads. And a quarterback that's not vocal, because if your quarterback can't control it and you got people going and they can chew him up, now as a coach, it's outside of your control. And these are just all of the inner workings as to why good teams you can function and why quarterbacks struggle, etc. But I digress, man. we can really go into, as we talk about this, is the next thing, man, and that is the Bill Belichick story.
That
Nate,
is correct.
how did you feel when you saw that? For you, how do you view Bill Belichick? For one, I more so want to hear that. And what are your thoughts on him taking this job?
Well, Belichick for me has always been a top 5 coach of all time in terms of my favorites. Now I'm not surprised he took the North Carolina job because he's dating someone that's like in their 20s. So it kind of makes sense that he took a college job. Like I'm not surprised, but in all seriousness, though, I was shocked. I thought he was going to go into the NFL, and I think we talked about this before in a previous episode, Coach, where it's like, okay, if he goes back into the NFL, it's the Giants, it's the Cowboys, and the Eagles, possibly if Sirianni were to go.
Yeah.
And all that stuff. Like that. Yeah, and I think the Jets were another option as well, and because there were reports recently that came out or this was after Belichick got the job at NC, where there was reports that he talked to the Jets about possibly taking over that head coaching job once next year comes around. Obviously, that didn't happen, but there was so much NFL interest where I'm like, okay, we'll see him next year in the NFL. He's doing his thing right now with, I think he's doing some sort of podcast, I think, or whatever the case may be. But he's also most of the time just enjoying life and with his new, very young girlfriend compared to where his age is at right now. I think it's like a 40 or 50-year gap, but I digress.
You think that's weird?
I'm sorry?
You think that's weird?
Age is just a number, but dude, when you guys listen to this, do not take that the wrong way, okay? Age, I know age is to me, age is a number. You like who you like. Obviously, be smart with it. This is, a 30-year-old.
Years old. It's a non-discussion. So, in regards to how do you feel about it? What are your thoughts on a man of that age who's clearly very rich and successful, who can get?
It's fine with me. Like it's fine with me. Like it, if it's fine with me, I guess. You like who you like, Coach. As long as he's legal age. By all means.
I don't know. It's funny how people try to make it to be like a weird thing. Like,
yeah, it's yeah.
He had a girlfriend. He's at a different point in his life, man. Dude's done it. Like,
yeah.
And I'm sure it's the girl that he's dating. I'm pretty sure she's like pretty educated, has a good job. She's clearly at a caliber that can match his consciousness.
Yeah.
Keep stimulated, you know what I mean? Because any girl, even if she's just good looking, he's obviously going to get tired of just hanging out with her. Bill Belichick is a brilliant man, you know what I mean? It makes no sense. So clearly, this girl has something to offer. Like, I don't know.
I wonder how they met too, huh, Coach? I wonder how they met.
They met on a plane. I believe I read that. They met on a flight. That happens all the time, by
the way. Love works in mysterious ways, right, Coach? I will say that. But back to the football aspect, right? We're not a romantic podcast. We'll save that for another segment, another day. In terms of Belichick's personal.
Years is good though.
Oh yeah, it's a fine gap. Like if she likes him for a reason, if he likes her.
But no, man. Belichick at UNC. So
yes,
obviously he's been very successful. I mean, that goes without saying. I think more so his impact on the game.
Yeah.
With the Lawrence Taylor defense with the New York Giants under Bill Parcells, him coming back to the Patriots in the mid-90s after a stint in Cleveland, getting to the Super Bowl with that rebuild, very impressive. To then his second stint in New England, inheriting Bledsoe, developing Brady, and going on. In those first 3 Super Bowls, man, this is vintage Belichick from what he was doing with the Giants in Cleveland, just terrorizing offense in the 80s and 90s. And so once he was and all those players in the 2000s were guys that he was a part of their development with Parcells, and those guys all just got older. Brewski and Willie McGinnis and Lawyer Malloy and Ty Law. Those are the players that I grew up on.
Yeah.
Those are his guys. And that's why they won 3 Super Bowls. And in the midst of that, he kept drafting. People get on him for whiffing on like receivers, but he hit on a lot of defense.
A lot of them.
Yeah. A lot of front 7 players. He missed. I mean, over the course of 20 years, a lot of the Patriots players were homegrown or retreads of guys who struggled elsewhere in the Patriots, brought them in and put them in a position. The first guy that comes to mind being Mike Vrabel in his emergence in New England. But I say that to say throughout those years, Belichick got a ton of guys hired. He obviously had like a dictatorship going on there because he was running personnel and all of the cap stuff was going through him. And you can't knock it, just like the Spurs. He adapted on the fly and had multiple errors of brilliance. So the fact that he's an NFL lifer is really different in this dynamic. Obviously, has ties to the college game. And
Yes.
his relationship with Nick Saban comes from the fact that one of Nick Saban's earlier jobs was at the Naval Academy as a DB coach.
Correct.
Steve Belichick met Saban and was just like, this young coach is sharp, and I want you to go meet my son. But
Yeah.
Belichick was obviously understanding scouting methods, pun intended, at the college game, and then being in the NFL from a really young age is like, this guy really understands the innovation of football and the nuances of like the chess match at a high level. So it's really just X's and O's to him. Like, the people thing doesn't really matter. And the fact that he knows cap is that he can understand the value of a player, which is a key thing that he's been discussing with this NIL, because he's looking at it as sheer ball. I don't think the dynamics really matter to him, but there are elements of dealing with personnel and control in the way the modern day has changed. And so for a guy like him, and this happens as well when a guy's been successful for a really long time and has to walk away from the situation but still wants to coach. I believe Pete Carroll's a guy like this. Pete Carroll wants the job. Nobody wants him. Pete Carroll's a guy that may find himself back in college at a certain period of time. So these things do happen. But for Bill Belichick to having never been to college, with the landscape being so drastically different, I think that he's put on more of his economic hat of being like, this is player value. Okay, this is the type of kid that I'd want, having those Navy values, understanding North Carolina's emphasis on academia, where North Carolina is geographically located. Like, I put myself in Bill Belichick's head and thinking about this job and looking at just the prestige of the University of North Carolina in sports history with Dean Smith and Michael Jordan. And I think it's amazing that Lawrence Taylor went there, and Drake May, the Patriots' new quarterback, went to UNC. The colors, like all those things considered, the only question that anyone would have to ask now is Bill Belichick ready for the dynamic of recruiting kids and understanding young people?
Yeah.
So I don't like to be really long-winded here, but this now brings me to the next evolution of this conversation. And that is that what makes me so excited about Bill Belichick taking this job is the fact that he has wisdom. He is one of the few figures in sports, business, and politics that has achieved all you could achieve. And I consider this to be a duty of giving back. And so he doesn't have to chase the kid getting 5 stars. He wants to get the kid that wants to be there, that's going to do his homework, that wants to graduate. And if they can play in the NFL, cool, but they're just going to try to win in everything they do in life. And I believe that the infrastructure is already there at the University of North Carolina, and he's going to be able to get a certain type of kid. So I see two worlds. One in which they're like an 8-4 team, and they're kind of like a Pitt or like a Michigan State, where they're just competitive but develop a ton of pros. Or I see them turning into a Penn State, like a football factory. What concerns me, the only concern that I actually have, is like the Matt Patricias and the Josh McDaniels and the NFL lifers that are going to be position coaches. Even if they get those types of kids, those guys are going to have to recruit, and they're going to have to get into households, and they're going to have to deal with parents and do a lot of tedious meetings and conventions and talking to other coaches. Now, I believe Bill Belichick is a teacher, and he's going to be able to develop a whole new tree of college coaches. And I think he can influence the college game a lot, but I don't know about those guys he's going to be bringing around him. I'm interested to see his staff. I think he's going to have a lot of NFL coaches, but I do think young guys at GA and get quality control jobs and analyst jobs in that environment, you're going to see a spark of like a new age of coaching. I think he's just going to get everyone to step up their game. And if he's not that successful, I think internally the impact in Chapel Hill and the kids that go to his program through a 2 or 3 year time frame, they're going to be very, very successful in life. In my comparison, in the last phase that I want to bring up here is that what people are forgetting is that Bill Walsh won 3 Super Bowls with the 49ers, and he had health issues, and he had definitely burnt out, but he handed the job over to George Seifert, and they won 2 more Super Bowls. Well, Bill Walsh got sick of just sitting at home. He couldn't help himself. He wrote a book, one of the greatest books in football coaching history, called Find the Winning Edge, and he was lecturing, and he said, I'm going to go be the head coach at Stanford. He was a coach at Stanford in like the 70s. For him to go coach at Stanford, having 3 Super Bowls under his belt and being the creator of the West Coast offense, Nate, was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
In time, man, he actually had like John Lynch. That's one of like his marquee guys that he found. And a senator down in New Jersey, I forget his name, Corey something. I can't think of his name off the top, but he played for Bill Walsh over at Stanford as well. And so it's interesting when a guy like Bill Walsh puts his influence in a program, having done that, and you're developed. Oh, David Shaw, the coach at Stanford for all those years, he played for Bill Walsh at Stanford as well. There's a long list of guys that were around that program. They only won like 6 or 7 games, but he was able to really leave his mark. And so I think that that's really unique, and I see the same impact. And so we can't forget that. Carroll did it in the past as well, which is our only other reference point, but he had been around back and forth. But the fact that he had been in the NFL world, I feel like he really made his splash on USC. So all things considered, man, I just think this is better for the game of football as a whole.
I think for me, it's just funny how Drake Mays with the Patriots came from UNC, and now Belichick, who's from the originally from the Patriots, goes to UNC. It's like a little trade, right? It's a unofficial trade that happened that occurred, I should say, as well. But
the football world does that a lot, man. The football world does that a lot in regards to like a guy who played in one place for a while, gets hurt, and then they land the number one. Like the Andrew Luck ending up in the Colts. How beautiful is that they go from Peyton to Andrew Luck? Like,
it just makes sense.
It's the football gods.
Yeah, it makes. Well, the football gods weren't so kind to the Detroit Lions this past weekend, but I digress. Maybe the gods should kind of lighten up a little
bit. But hey, who did they lose to? Who did they lose to?
They lost to the Bills.
But who have the football gods tormented for years?
Us, my Giants.
Man, you got 2 Super Bowls. I don't want to hear nothing about that. You got 2 dramatic Super Bowls over the team with the most Super Bowls.
It's been a long time, Coach.
It's been a long time. Rival. No, get out of here, man.
It's been a long time, Coach. It's been a long time. 2012 is a long time.
I don't want to hear it, man. I love seeing the Giants struggle.
Oh, well, I thank you, Coach. It means a lot. Anyways, no, but I will say, for me, you mentioned how Belichick going to UNC, it's going to be an attractive place to go, and you mentioned how like he doesn't have to go recruit the 5-star guys. To me, it's like the 5-star guys and the 4-stars, they're going to go to him because it's like, okay, this is Bill Belichick. Why would I want to go to some random school, for example, in Stanford or UCF or
Alto's beautiful.
It is, but it's like I get to play for and learn from the greatest coach in NFL history in Bill Belichick, where it's like, instead of like going to some random school, not random school, but just like a other school, I should say. So he's going to do his recruiting. He's going to hire hopefully a good staff and a decent set of coordinators and whatnot that will help recruit these athletes. But it's the name brand. This is Bill Belichick. That's who he is, and that's what's going to draw in athletes to come play for the Tar Heels. Now, the only question I have is for you, and it's like I'm sure there were other schools as well who may have had interest in him as a coach. I'm not sure.
He got that job out. I think, like, obviously, I don't know, but for a lot of those things that I had mentioned in regards to just jobs that had opened up early, as you're just analyzing the market, I think the ACC definitely resonates with the Bill Belichick brand geographically and the way those schools are designed, just being like pretty good academic schools on the East Coast. Bill Belichick's an East Coast guy for sure. And so as an older statesman, you're not going to relocate with all his properties and things like that, his family, he probably has grandkids. So not only that, there's definitely, like, if you're in the SEC, man, you got boosters, and there's not a big influence on education. There's not a big emphasis on education. In that, what that does is that impacts the quality of kid that you're going to get. Well, North Carolina gets a pretty specific type of kid, and that's what I find so compelling. I find their brand, if woken up properly, to be like a Notre Dame or a Penn State football under the leadership of Bill Belichick. And that's what I'm talking about. Like this pro style, blue collar kid, son of pros, kid that also wants to do school, gritty as all hell, played multiple sports in high school. Bill Belichick has a specific type of kid. And I just think that the North Carolina brand aligns with Bill Belichick's values.
Okay. So it kind of makes, so this all just makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. It really does, man.
Okay. Yeah. And then, in his press conference, he mentioned how, like, it's not just going to be about football. He's going to help these kids prepare themselves for their career outside of football if they don't make the NFL, because not everyone does make the league, right? And not every single player that plays for him, just because they play for him, doesn't guarantee them or better their chances at all at making the professional leagues. So I like his philosophy. So far from what we've heard from him, he looks prepared to help Tar Heels have success in his first season, which will be next year, of course. I'm excited personally because he is coming to California to play the Golden Bears next year. Date yet to be determined, but I'm excited to hopefully attend that game and see the greatest NFL coach of all time be on the sidelines for a college program, which is the North Carolina Tar Heel. So 5 years. Yeah, 5 years, $50 million is the contract for him. So, which is standard for all college coaches, right? So as long as everything goes well, he should play out that contract fully. And the future, we'll see what happens there. But hey, coach, we could possibly see you work for UNC eventually, right? It could happen, possibly. I mean, you working for the GOAT, a coach with the coach, not out of the realm of possibility, right?
What I'll tell you is this, man. With some of the work that I'm doing with athlete development and understanding biometrics and being able to get comparative analysis to understanding the height, weight, speed of a specific position, and then understanding and using those metrics as the foundation to recruit a certain type of player or a certain type of players that put up certain type of numbers with a certain body type can allow you to define the type of player that you want. And then understanding workload. So like the injury world and the strength and conditioning world in conjunction with how practice is conducted and the capabilities of each player. There's some unique stuff that I would like to add to a football program. I've do work similar to this with the military. I'm beginning to see an intersection of human performance and analytics. And analytics are, and I've talked about this with you countless times, but are beginning to become a method of decision making in pro sports, but integrating different aspects of analytics in operations, how you're utilizing time in practice, player development, managing recovery and just overall load, and then output of a player within a game. And so like intensity of practice. Holistically being able to connect all these dots for an athletic program is, as me as a coach in sport, which is to me, I'm learning is a lot more of like an athletic director. But I think about coaching every day, but more so to how to run a team and help organize and manage and get this information and put guys in position, because the more it is well run and organized, the easier it becomes to just focus on football. And so that's what you get with Bill Belichick as a CEO. So as you talk about UNC, it's being able to insert these types of management systems with organizations that have the capacity to integrate them to go up to that next level. Alabama has it, and you see that in regards to sports teams that just operate like well-oiled machines. So we'll see, man. We'll see about the football world. No further comments.
No further comment there. If you were a coach too, because for me, my dream has always been to be a coach. Obviously, I've always dreamed of playing in the NFL and college and all that stuff, and obviously that kind of has dwindled to just a a fever dream, but I do want to coach eventually one day. For I always tell my friends that the high school that I went to, I want to go back there and kind of turn that program around, because when I was there, a lot of losing, 1-9 during my senior year, so it wasn't the most fun thing in the world. But I want to go back and definitely run that program and try to fix things over there. So for me, and this will wrap things up here, and I want to ask your opinion on how your philosophy is. For me, coach, I love the spread offense. I like, you can criticize me all you want, but I love 4 receivers spread out, 1 running back in the backfield in the shotgun. I love this. I don't like under center. I don't like that stuff. And maybe that's just because that's the new fan in me. Like I'm not the more. I'm not
in like 2004.
Okay, well, sorry. Okay, I don't like the under center stuff. I like the shotgun. I like the pistol. I like the 1 running back in the back. I like things to be spread out. Just to spread out offense. Throw the ball 30. I know it's unrealistic for a high school quarterback, but I can make it work if I find the right guy. Like 30, 40 times. Throw the ball around defensively. And I'll hire DC. They can deal with that stuff.
Oh man, this doesn't sound too good. I like your philosophy one bit.
Well, what do you mean, coach? Come on now.
Coach, man, this is why high school football throughout America is just toxic. But
coach, come on. I want excitement, coach. I want action. I want points all over the board. If I can get like some solid receivers, a good running back that's like elusive receiving back, I could get something going. I tell you what, I win more than 1 game than what when I was there at my high school. So I tell you that. But for you, coach, what is your philosophy as a coach? Like, what type of offense do you like to run? What defense do you like to run? Before we wrap things up here.
Yeah, I mean, it's all relative to the strengths of your personnel first and foremost. There's a couple of things that you can ensure your team has, and that is being well conditioned and being tough.
Yeah.
So trying to break them down and forcing them to compete through just like bubble drill, inside run, or like half line, to like a 2-on-2 route concept, and putting stakes involved and having them compete. Really being able to just identify who can win one-on-ones and who can do what roles. That's first and foremost. Offensively, it's really about concepts. The size of my O-line, do they have good feet? But it comes down to the plays that you develop. It's like you want to have a main play and a counter play. Do my guys have the footwork to run, to pull and to run gap schemes, or are they a little smaller and we want to just create small little creases? We're going to be a zone scheme.
Yeah.
There, I know what my primary play is. Like, let's say it's going to be inside zone, for instance. Well, from my inside zone, I can run a split zone with my tight end. I can run all my RPO stuff off of that. And then within my pass game, it's like, well, what is the capabilities of my quarterback? Are we going to be a quick bubble team? Are we going to have a 3-step game that we can go into? And then, like, if we have 2 to 3 route concepts, just based on where our threats are, our best players being tight end or inside receiver or outside receiver, making sure that we just have different formations to run the same concepts that get us in a high-low to get one of our best players the ball, and then making that a bread and butter so that we can continue to expand on that. And then once your quarterback gets a concept, you have one sort of play action or rollout bootleg that gives that run illusion of your primary play into a play action pass, which is like a deception. On defense, though, man, again, it's like, how many big bodies do I have? My 3 down front or my 4 down front? Even if I am a 3 down front, I can bring an outside linebacker, have him stand up, and still give an illusion of a 4-3 over.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter. 3-4, 4-3 doesn't really matter. The real decision I need to make is like, am I going to have 4 DBs or 5 DBs on the field? Or like, do I have 7 primary box stuffers? Now it's just like, for whatever my primary defense is in your base defense, how many different ways can I mask it? Same responsibilities, but it looks like they're in a different front. Do I have 1 high safety, 2 high safeties based on what I'm basing out of? It doesn't make a difference. It's whatever we're better at. I have some philosophical principles with gap schemes and the different depths and different calls I'm going to make, which every single playbook that I would utilize will incorporate those types of concepts with like zone blitzes, or like on the offensive side with like 3-man concepts, etc. They will always be there, but how we're going to package it is just dependent upon what we got. Because I understand football, like all 22 positions and philosophically what it is I'm trying to achieve to win football games, it's easy to take a collection of 60 guys, identify what their strengths are, and begin plugging away and then building our scheme around that. And it is a long incremental process, but coach is coach, man. I feel like I'm just built to do that. And it's a damn shame that I'm not. But yeah, that's exactly how I'd go about building a team if I were doing that.
All right. Is there a dream school you want to coach? If you could just pick one dream school in college to coach for, because I know I'm not gonna say NFL team because I know darn well you do not. Your favoritism for the NFL is not as much as college. So if you could just pick one dream school to coach for,
it's funny that you're asking me this. So we're shooting, and it's just funny as our dialogue has evolved in this conversation.
Yeah.
No, I don't even necessarily have a dream job. I would like to go to an institution that has the values of putting academics first and job placement of like a kid graduating, going on to better things.
Yeah.
And being able to claim the university a strong community and an opportunity to also teach and conduct research in my own PhD and lead the football team as like, on the spare time, but like doing all those things within a university, bringing it together. That's the kind of job I'd want. And any university that would able to, boosters and community relations, if they were to be able to create that type of environment, you can plug me in Antarctica, man, and I'll lead that team. But yeah, that's more so like why I don't coach is because I want support and I want it to look a certain type of way. And yeah, it's probably it's a large ask.
Yeah, definitely, right?
I mean, if I would return to the sidelines, you got to pull me away from, my other vision. So that's how I look at it, man.
It'll take a lot to bring you back.
It would take a lot to bring me back. Yeah. Money talks, right?
It sure does. Hey, ask those college athletes out there. They're getting paid NIL money to stay for another year. It's crazy how, and I don't mean to make this long-winded or, a long episode that
it just sounds like you're pleading to make me return to coaching.
I mean, hey, you said money talks, coach. I mean, look at these athletes, because nowadays, because how it used to be like, oh, I'm returning to school. Now it's like, oh, like the Kansas quarterback, Jalen Daniels. There was a report that said, oh, he's returning to Kansas on a deal. We're not used to saying that, like a deal. This is college. This ain't the NFL. But it's like you look into it's an NIL deal for him to come back and get money.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that more often with Daniels and Quinn Ewers, who reports are saying that he might not go for the NFL draft this year because
transfer though, or Arch is coming, man.
Arch is coming. Oh man, hey, we played NCAA, right, coach? And I'm sure with Texas, it's like even though Ewers is the starter week 1, once that year 2 comes around in Dynasty, Arch Manning goes up to like a 96 after from an 80 to like a 96, and it's like what the fudge happened? But it's the potential that the game thinks of Arch, and it's in real life too. Arch Manning has so much potential. But we just need to see more of that on the field. So once next year comes around, that's Archer's turn. So Quinn Ewers better just go. Now, he has, of course, interest from other schools, of course. But we'll see what happens if he declares for the draft. But just my point was like how money does talk. And these athletes are staying back in college to play another year, not only to boost their draft stock, but to also get that NIL money. And I'm just saying, coach, if you were to go back in coaching, I'm sure, for the right price, they'll bring you back. But I digress. We'll leave it there for Coach's Corner. Now, for our next episode, we will talk about Colorado and their bowl game. It just really sucks, Coach. I wish they were in the Big 12 championship. I really do, because they were so close, but then that loss to Kansas hurt. And of course, I know they almost did, but that loss hurt. So, but other than that, so next episode we'll preview their bowl game, which is against for some reason can't think
BYU.
of it. BYU. I think we've talked about BYU a few times.
We have. They were losing in the Big 12 throughout the season.
That's correct. So we'll talk about.
And they just they crapped down their leg to end the year out.
They were doing so well, and then they just fell down the stretch. But two good teams. We'll break that bowl game down there in our next episode, and we'll go from there. But today, fun episode. We broke down Travis Hunter winning the Heisman. Congrats to him once again. And we talked about Bill Belichick and his new job at UNC. and we'll see what happens there with the Tar Heels in the 2025 season. You can follow Coach at Anton G. Wilson on Twitter. You can follow me at Nathan_124. And of course, you can follow our podcast page where you can find all of our clips from our 4 episodes at 3rd and 10 Pod on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. For Coach, I'm Nate. Thank you so much for your support. You guys have shown out with your views and likes and comments. We appreciate you guys for all that stuff. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.